Hey, everybody, here with Paul Abbott, and we're talking about the issue of homelessness. Paul has had a ton of experience working with people all over the community. So wanted to sit down with him and get his insight into what he's seen, what he's learned. So, Paul, maybe you could just start by sharing a little bit about kind of how you got into this, what you've been doing over the last few years. It's pretty amazing.
Well, I've been working in community development around the world since '84, so a long time in working with poor communities, communities in crisis, global crises, refugees, and such. So when we came here, my family and I, in 2019, and saw the homeless situation here, we thought, wow, we need to figure this thing out.
Mm,
Just to see people sleeping around on the streets and such, and at the library, didn't make sense. It makes more sense now that we understand the drug culture, the mental issues, the background that led to their homelessness and such.
yeah.
But then in 2020, for a year, I worked as outreach coordinator for the Good News Rescue Mission.
Okay.
So my job was to go to the streets and the camps every day and bring people to the mission. And then I learned about that dynamic too, just the dynamic that they see going to the mission, not going to the mission, why not go to the mission, what are the issues. That was a very good year for me. I met pretty much every player in terms of homeless outreach or ministry and Reading,
Yeah.
joined the COC and such. Yeah.
And so I think, there's a lot of ideas out there about what this group of people who are living on the streets and, how they ended up there, what their life is like now. Could you explain just, a little bit about what you've learned from meeting all these people and actually talking to them individually? How they what is your sense of how a lot of them ended up in that position and what are some of the challenges that they're facing now?
Well, there is a small minority of people that had some bad luck that can be given a hand up and get back on track fairly quickly.
Hmm.
There are definitely people out there like that, but they're a small minority. I've heard hundreds of stories now, and most of them grew up in a toxic relationship in their families from the get-go. What we would see as common sense in normal life, they've never lived it.
Wow.
So I hear those stories, and just across the board, I think, wow, I can see myself in that person's shoes.
Mm.
I don't agree with it. I think it's tragic, but if I walked in their shoes, I could be doing the same thing.
Yeah.
It's hard to understand unless you've really listened deeply to the story and understood. And it helps me because I've been in different cultures and have understood. Look, I have my worldview, and
Hmm.
someone else has another worldview. It can be quite a bit different, you
Yeah.
know. But if I give myself some time to put myself in their shoes, I go, okay, I see. If I was in their situation, I could be like that. And just to say too that I would say the mass majority, 90% of the people out there have just lived a life of chaos. They've not lived in any healthy relationship.
Mm.
We were made to bond and connect with our parents in a healthy relationship that allows us to develop an identity
Yeah.
that's solid, an identity that's secure, an identity with a good workable level of motivation, a good dopamine level, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Without having to get it up some other way.
Mm.
But whether they've been, many were raised in drugs with families that were taking drugs, so they got on the drugs quickly.
Yeah.
If not, they may have been abused sexually, and that sent them off on a different type of path. But we're looking at people that really need a healthy friends, community, new family. They've never had it, and those are the people that I'm drawn to when I help.
That's amazing. And I think your personal experience with it, with folks out there, really, I think, cuts through a lot of the kind of assumptions about, oh, this is what it looks like, this is how it happened, and you know, one of the one of the common assumptions I would say is that a lot of these folks don't want help. They, don't want to access the services. What is your experience, along experiencing talking to people about that, inviting them to services as you've done in a number of different ways?
Yeah, it's pretty complex just given their background, but when you're abused by a father and mother, and life doesn't make sense, and you're growing up in a lifestyle of bad habits, just the opposite of a good habit, just about everywhere. And you try to make it in life, you try to fill out a form, you try to do anything, they just walk with you, these habits. You know, a guy that I know, a guy named Eric Dean, African American guy, he came up to me the other day, said, "Paul, please come and help me. I just saw him on the street. Paul, help me. I'm going to get kicked out of my storage unit." And I went and helped him in the storage unit. And he was basically just being kicked out because he couldn't hold the conversation long enough without getting mad at the woman who was the manager. And he knew he needed help because he just couldn't make that happen. And that's endemic.
Right.
Endemic. And then you have the drug situation, often mental situation, the forms that you have to fill out. And I've done this a lot, whether it's with general assistance, housing, whatever, the restrictions we have on people living in the camps that aren't getting a good night's sleep, that are on drugs, to follow through and fill out the forms. No, it's never going to happen. It's not designed for the homeless. Even with a caseworker like I've been, it's complicated. And I've talked to some of the agents, just say, wow, this isn't your fault. It's the system, I know, but you see how impossible this is? I'm the caseworker, and I'm following up, and you only gave me 10 days to do something that has all these different things. They're never going to make it. They're never going to make it. So they run into just the bureaucracy that would be a pain for you or I.
Right.
And it's impossible.
Yeah.
Even any caseworker will tell you it's really rough to follow through with the systems. And I bless God and all the Shasta County, community health associates and advocates that work with us to do that. And they really try to do a good job. But it's kind of like the rehab systems too. They're not chronically homeless friendly. The people are just more messed up than that. And why do more people not go to the mission? They don't have the wherewithal. They're too sick to follow the rules. They get kicked out. It's they need extra help for sure.
Yeah, and so you've both been a part of, you've tried a number of things. You talked about being involved with the mission. You've been involved with micro shelters here. What are some of the things that you have tried or seen tried here, and what are some of the lessons learned from those different interventions, I'll call them, that you've experienced here?
Well, the best thing that works is friendships. You stick with the person long enough, and even if you don't get through the first hoop or the second hoop, later on you can get through to that hoop, so to speak. You can get that paper signed and move them on to something different. The issue there again is, even if they get out of rehab, then what? They're clean, but behavior hasn't changed. So the same worldview and habits that got them there in the first place can happen again, and they often do. Depends on where they are. If they're chronically homeless, came from a chaotic family, an abusive family situation where life hasn't made sense, they never really connected well relationship-wise with anybody, they really need a new life. They need to be able to start over in a context of a small community where that can happen, and that's why we're going more towards this therapeutic community approach.
Yeah, to that point, I know we've talked about this a few times, but what are some of the models out there that you've seen that are working? And I know some of them are outside of California, and you've traveled to visit some of them. So what are some of those, and what are the kind of key lessons or best practices that you think we could adapt from that?
Well, some of the programs that are the most successful are the longer ones, where their behavior can catch up with what they're learning. And they're living in community, and everybody's holding themselves accountable. So the Delancey Street Foundation in San Francisco and Los Angeles has done that well for 50 years.
Okay.
And then an off-spin of those is the Other Side Academy in Salt Lake City, which is this family.
The hat, nice.
Right? And we've been there 2 times, and we're taking some other people down there so we can really wrap our minds around what they're doing and then do the same thing here. Teen Challenge, they try to have that. They do have that community, and I think they're 13 months now. the New Life Recovery Program at the Mission. They've been longer periods there too. So someone who can really go through that and gain that same new life,
Yeah.
New Life Recovery Program, that's helpful too. Yeah, we need to have more of those, especially for the chronically homeless, just to be that new family. And then once they get out of those programs, now what?
Mm-hmm.
If Joe Plummer from Hill Country, the CEO for Hill Country,
Yeah.
she said, "I really believe that the community of the church is a solution to homelessness, because
Okay.
she knows they need to be picked up by a community. They can help them out at Hill Country. We can do what we can. A recovery program could really work well. But if they don't have new friends and new community, they fall back out. And that's what breaks my heart when I see people, I'm getting their stories, how many times they've already been to rehab.
Mm-hmm.
They've been to different programs. Well, what are you doing out here? And you ask enough questions and you realize, well, it's because I never found new friends that were healthy.
Okay. And so some of these models that you have seen working, on one hand, it's like the idea is to try to create that new community for them where it has a different set of almost operating principles or like norms, right? But then I think you're also saying that even say they go through a year-long program or a 2-year program, there's still a need for the community, in Shasta County to embrace these people coming out of that and, help, integrate them into kind of, a different set of healthy community.
Exactly. There's a businessman, Les, that supports a lot of what we're doing, Les Reading. We just got an apartment next to mine, rented that, have a family living there, and then we brought a previously homeless woman that was chronically homeless, and she's living there with them now.
Mm-hmm.
So we can help her get back to healthy habits, still keep connected, get her into a working environment again, and then be a part of that community that we're a part of. So we'll be her new friends and community. Yeah. So, and that's happening with several other people too now. We're excited about that. So that's like step 4, right? First step, get to know people,
right?
Build that trust, move them on with the promise of getting to a place like that.
Mm-hmm.
We're with you, and then have they can make it in a rehab facility, great. If they can't, then something like this group home that we're talking about, where we live and work together, learn healthy habits.
Yeah. You talked when we were talking earlier. You mentioned this idea of accountability. How does that play into how you think about what a new community looks like and the importance of that to someone trying to come out of chronic homelessness?
That's huge. At the Other Side Academy, they give each other pull-ups, they call it.
Okay.
If someone's breaking a rule or a principle or unloving or whatever, they go, "Hey, I'm giving you a pull-up, man." And if they say, "Okay, I'm sorry," then it's good. If they say, "F you," whatever, and it goes on, then that person will go to their tribe leader and say, "Hey, George was doing this. I gave him a pull-up. This is what he did."
Yeah.
Okay, George, let's talk about this. Kind of like 2 or 3 witnesses coming together. Did you do that? Are you sorry about that? Do you really mean that? Yeah. Okay. Well, here's your consequence. You need to clean extra this day or whatever. And then twice a week they have breakthrough sessions, 2 evenings a week, for 2 hours. They used to call them the games. But if they don't respond to the one person or the 2 or 3, then they're in a group of 25 people and they get reamed out.
Wow.
They get reamed out by everybody.
Well,
with tough love, they say, although there's some explicatives there because they're they're faith friendly, but they're not faith based.
But I think
that works.
Well,
it's like a family.
Yeah.
And now I'm in a family where we hold each other accountable, and no one gets away with anything. They end up really liking it.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that I've been hearing, and I think I've been trying to echo is, we sometimes have seen the folks who are working on homelessness as being in 2 camps. You have the compassion camp and then the accountability camp. Mm-hmm. But it sounds, and the way I've been thinking about it is we actually need to combine those two. We need to meet people where they are. We need to walk them on the journey, but we also need to hold them accountable to make changes in your life.
I would say there's a difference between sympathy and compassion.
Okay.
And the sympathy camp, It's called compassion sometimes, but I don't think that's really
Okay,
compassion.
so you're saying that
Compassion is bringing in accountability because I care about the person.
yeah.
I'm going to give them tough love.
No,
A
that
friend
makes
will
sense.
give a friend what he needs to hear.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
If I don't really care, yeah, whatever, Matt. Your life is your life. I'm not going to confront you because you're not worth it, right?
Yeah. So one of the things that's obviously a big issue when it comes to this challenge is housing. And there's a lot of debate around, housing first, or, is that completely wrong? Is it partially wrong? Is that the gold standard? You find people all on different spectrum along that, I guess you could call it spectrum.
Yeah.
How do you think about both the role of housing in addressing this challenge, and what I think we've heard and established here is that there's a shortage of housing. That's true all across California. So how does that play into the mix? Where do you see that fitting into this whole picture?
Well, housing definitely is an issue. We need shelters.
Yeah.
I think we just need to realize and to surf off of what we were talking about in terms of built for zero.
Mm-hmm.
We need to value diversity because people are very diverse.
Okay.
I've helped some people get back into housing within 2 weeks. They just had some bad luck and they needed to get back, and they weren't so damaged, so to
Right.
speak. Right? They just needed a little bit of help. Other people that need community and friends, otherwise they're going to fall back. You put them in a housing first situation, their friends are going to come in there, they're going to trash the house, and it just pollutes the whole housing first approach. And it's not easy getting landlords engaged. That's a subcommittee here, landlord engagement. How do we get
Right.
landlords engaged? Well, it's tough because if you put someone in a house and they're not going to be responsible, then they're just going to pollute the whole system even more, and you're going to find fewer and fewer houses to rent, right, for the homeless. So we need a diversity. I'm glad. I get it. I'd rather see someone in a house than here,
Right.
camping out, destroying the river, whatever. It doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah.
But I think we need to be smart about it and see what they really need. And if they need to live 2 years in a family context where they learn a new life, they get a second start, and they're in a family situation where they really are loved and held accountable.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Right. It's not a one size solution. We have to figure out on an individual basis. And I think, and we've talked a lot about Built for Zero, that's part of the approach is knowing each person by name, understanding what services and have they accessed, what challenges have they encountered, and then understanding what uniquely could help that individual.
Exactly.
But you need to then have the diversity of options available in the community to then connect them to.
I just wish that we had in California housing and shelter laws much more like Oregon, so you could set things up according to the need. You know what I mean?
Can you say more about that?
Well, we did that micro shelter symposium at Simpson a couple years ago. In Oregon, you can put some shelters in a church's lot, put three to four of them there, put a porta potty there, have a legal camping ground, cooking area, cost you maybe $20,000, and you're taking people that need connection from rehab to this church. They get involved with the church, and then they're off.
Yeah.
You know what the budget is for that? Zero. $20,000 to set things up is zero. You know what it is here? You can't even do it.
Yeah.
What a shame. We're not talking another country, just another state right next to us.
Right.
California has a huge homeless problem. I think they should be innovative enough to at least see what's happening there next door and just do it. But we couldn't do it.
Yeah. So that's a good thing for us to think about at the policy level. What can the county or the city, influence there versus what is, tangled up in the state level. But certainly we should see, what level of ability we have to change that, from a policy standpoint here locally.
Exactly.
I mean, because I was just talking with someone at Health and Human Services Agency with the county, and they were saying that to build a new unit of housing for, let's say, someone who's currently homeless, that typically is running about $700,000 for a single unit. And that's, I mean, how are we supposed to address this challenge if we have to pay $700,000 for a single unit and we have a couple hundred people living on the streets? I mean,
that's the point I want to make.
Yeah.
So, tiny homes, we can get them built at Forever Tiny Homes in Cottonwood. for like 45,000. As an RV, you can move them
Mm-hmm.
right in. They can live right there. I mean, let's get creative. Get
Yeah.
people off the streets.
I mean, I think, and we're talking about in the context of the homelessness challenge, but as a whole community, we need to think about how do we be creative to build more housing, across the whole spectrum, from single family residence for market rate to, what you're talking about of like micro shelters. We can't be satisfied with like, oh yeah, we're just up against these constraints and we're not going to keep building. I mean, we're going to find ourselves in a similar position where fewer people are able to afford homes, fewer people are able to rent, and then it just trickles down into greater homelessness challenges.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah.
Anything else that that you think would be important to share from your experiences, or things people should be thinking about?
Well, I think you're going down the right road. I think we need to value diversity a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Housing first is good, but right now, all government funding only goes to the approaches that are housing first only.
Okay.
And that's not our approach. So why be penalized?
Yeah.
Isn't that a shame?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, Paul, thanks for your time, and thanks really for the work you're doing. That where you're meeting people where they are, you're building relationship with them. I think that's such a important aspect of this. I mean, it's easy, particularly for me, who often is operating at the like, how do we think about the systems and the organizations involved, to you can lose sight of the individuals and what are their story. And so value your work and your approach to like, let's build community, let's base this all around healthy relationships. So thanks for what you're doing for our community.
Yeah. Thanks.